The second experiment we're going to discuss is addressing the hypothesis that insomnia contributes to constipation. And then the proposed mechanism is that insomnia contributes to constipation due to an upset in biological rhythms, resulting in mistiming of hormones released. So there's quite a lot to unpack there. We certainly know that the microbiome is involved in sleep, and one of the interesting findings in the American Gut Project was that the number of hours of sleep that you get every night is strongly linked to how diverse your microbiome is. So if you're getting fewer than 6 hours sleep at night, you have a relatively depleted microbiome compared to people who are getting more rest. And there's also been a number of animal model experiments showing that sleep and the microbiome have a very tight connection with each other. What we don't know at this point is how much of that connection is due to hormones specifically, and that's not a question that it'll be possible to get to with this experimental design, where it'll be possible to find an association between insomnia and constipation, but it won't be possible to pin that down to a mechanism. And there's other things besides hormones that might be affecting that mechanism, including things as simple as when during the day your gut is occupied with food. But it's still a very interesting experiment. And then, in terms of the manipulation of insomnia, one slight it's not really a problem with this experimental design, but it's something to be aware of, as that insomnia is not being manipulated; it's just being observed. So this is a purely observational study rather than trying to cause insomnia. And on the one hand, that's probably for the best, because causing insomnia isn't the best idea. But on the other hand, by not being able to manipulate insomnia, you won't necessarily know whether the insomnia is causing constipation, or whether the constipation is causing insomnia, or whether they're both being caused by some independent factor of both of those. And then the reminder to assess constipation once a day seems relatively reasonable, although some guidelines about what counts as constipation and what doesn't would be helpful. And so one really important question to decide is whether people should just be thinking about constipation relative to them, or constipation relative to other people in the general population, because what makes you feel constipated in terms of stool frequency may not be the same for everyone else. But again, it's a very interesting potential association, and we do know for sure, again in mouse experiments, that changing the transit time of stool through the gut doing that in an experimental context can manipulate the microbiome. And so we know that the microbiome is linked to transit time, both from that and by looking at stool consistency and stool frequency in humans, and seeing whether stool that you produce with different consistency or different frequency has a different microbiome in it. And we know there's links between the microbiome and sleep. And so combining those into one experiment is certainly an interesting thing to do.